Hi there. Before we get started, let's take a deep breath. Relax as you exhale. And take a few more deep breaths. Slow, steady inhale and exhale. Now, we're going to imagine source energy, a bright light above you. It's the place you would look to when you pray. Imagine that light coming down into your body, entering the crown, filling up your head completely. Imagine that light entering your neck, your shoulders, filling up your arms and your fingers, your chest, your torso. Imagine the light filling your hips, your pelvis, down both of your legs, and filling up your toes. This light completely filling your body. I invite you to imagine shooting 2 cords out the bottom of your feet, and pushing them down into the center of the earth. Them in or tie them off there in the center of the earth, and invite Mother Earth's loving energy to come up those cords, entering your body, filling your feet, your legs, your hips, your torso, your shoulders, your arms, your fingers, your neck, and your head. Now imagine, as you are connected to heaven and earth, that these 2 energies meet at your heart. As you imagine bringing these 2 energies to meet at your heart, you form a bubble with the energies around your heart. I want you to expand this bubble to include your whole chest. Expand your bubble to include your whole body. Imagine expanding your bubble to include the room that you're in. Expand your bubble to include the building that you're in. Expand your bubble to include the town you are in. Expand to include the state. Expand to include the country that you're in. Expand to include the earth. Bring your bubble out past the constraints of time and space, and even a little bit further than that, out into space. You are now connected to all that is. And from this space, we want to take some more slow, steady breaths. Inhale and exhale. We put ourselves in this state as we prepare to bring ourselves to a timeline that is most beneficial for us to visit at this time. And we do this for the purpose of cleaning up the timeline or bringing our resonance up to the timeline. And we do this within the highest good of all. We agree to allow our resonance to match the timeline or something better. Now we're going to take our left hand and put it on the right knee and bring it back. Put your right hand on your left knee, put it back. I want you to continue to crisscross do it until the count of 20. Continuing to breathe steadily, relaxing with each exhale. Doesn't have to be exactly 20. Allowing our left and right hemisphere to sync up. As we prepare to move energy within our vessel and within our reality. As we begin, we picture ourselves in the place of allowing. Hi, reflection number 1. I have pre-dealt the piles here. I have an oracle on hand to answer any questions that may arise. So let's see what we got. He walked away. You no longer fit their expectation. You grew apart. Give yourself what you want. And we've got this feelings card. How does dog feel about cat? Does dog notice cat is not noticing dog? What should dog do? What do you think dog should do if cat does not want to be friends? This looks like a bit of unrequited love. Okay. I have a lot more cards though. Let's see what else. Thus, once, third, and whatever. There are some other factors playing out here in this situation. This situation may be taking place with father, a community member, a new connection, be someone you're trying to establish a relationship with, or a guide. So if you want to plug somebody else into the scenario that's laying out here, if someone comes to mind and they are in one of those roles, you can. But I kind of have the sense that there's something bigger for me to see here as I look at more cards. So I'm just going to keep going. Let's get to know each other. Shame is affecting me. Creativity. Semi-square. So there's some sort of subtle tension. So subtle it may not even be noticed or named. If it's noticed, it may not be. It may be so subtle that you like. It's like I don't really feel good about that, and I don't even know why. Kind of feeling. This could very well be happening in the public sphere, in a community, in an organization that you're a part of, with your father, with a father figure. The original wounding that could be being brought to your attention could have happened with father or father figure. And there's really a part of you trying to bring justice to yourself by filling a need. So this scenario is going to highlight for you something like an unmet need. Okay. I think it's an unmet need of having the support and love and guidance of your father. Father may have been distracted or absent or deceased. Do you remember the best advice you've ever received and the worst? Pause to answer those questions for yourself right now. But what comes to mind immediately is that advice we get from Father. You know, ideally, a father is in a position to advise us when we need it. And I'm not saying that every father-child relationship follows that paradigm, but I think as children, this would be an ideal situation that we have a father that we can go to for advice, that just cares about our well-being and so wants to share their wisdom with us. Fee, silly, weird. Yeah. Maybe really wanting a playful, loving, kind relationship with a father figure or someone that reminds you of a father figure. And even if this is romantic, there's something affecting this situation that is rooted in the relationship with father. You are in your integrity, meaning you're in line with what's important to you. You're acting in line with what's important to you. So having a relationship with somebody in particular, I think, is important to you. And something you can do is add compassion, meaning maybe you're not seeing the other side of it. Maybe with this other person who appears to be walking away, not engaging, not returning your care or love or curiosity or your invitation for a relationship. Perhaps there's some reason and you don't know about it. And the only thing that's keeping you from having compassion for that person and their situation is the fact that you're actually operating from some sort of place within you that has an unmet need, and that is veiling the big picture for you, meaning you're just seeing things through the lack of what you needed. And this could have been at a professional sphere as well, like a boss or somebody that was in a supportive role to people in general. And so you had certain expectation or wants or needs from that person within your life, but perhaps they're not returning it the way that you thought, or maybe there were some signals that you misread. So it caused you to expect one thing, but actually you realized things were another way. This may have caused you to feel defensive, and that defensiveness could come up in the way of actually a few ways. You could ignore that this person is even having this response to you. You could act as if they're not walking away or rejecting you or not disengaged from you. And you might be doing that because you would feel shame if you let yourself believe that that was the case. Somehow shame is tied into the original wound. Like if father didn't commit to you in the way that you had wanted, or engage with you in the relationship you desired, perhaps you internalize that and now feel shameful about that, where there's some sort of internal story about how that is your fault, or that you were lacking in some way, or that you just couldn't inspire them to it, or that you were wrong for even expecting or wanting it. Might be feeling shame for wanting to engage in this particular relationship. You might feel like someone wise could have advised you better about how to handle this situation. Like that you should have put it in better perspective, or walked away yourself, or understood what was being shown to you. So let's go back to focusing on what you need, right? Because what you need is something that you will want to identify so that you can give it to yourself. So what did you want out of this situation? What was the best case scenario? And then what was the worst case scenario? Wanted to form a relationship. I think you hoped that it could be fun and light and free. And I think you felt really inspired to create this. It's totally in line with who you are. Issue comes in with the person you chose to have this relationship with. Originally, of course, you didn't necessarily choose the father and how they would be within your life and in their role. But this other person that's kind of activating the situation for you, if there's another person separate from father that is father-like, that may be in the community, that maybe someone new that you've met, this wound is getting projected onto that situation. And I'm just saying that person, they have a whole story themselves about their life and how they live, and, you know, what beliefs they have and how they choose to conduct themselves. And for whatever reason, they're not returning your affections. And really, you don't know what that means, as far as like, you have not had a conversation with them. And you're probably not even in a position to have a conversation with them about that. You just have to accept that that's the reality of it. You know, and maybe you feel a little bit foolish and goofy and silly. And maybe that's where that kind of shame is coming in, because maybe you had been shamed as a child for acting inappropriately goofy or foolish at some time. It's entirely possible that you're another character in this story, and that you are one that doesn't want to engage because you feel foolish and you feel like that would be silly and goofy. And it is due to a wounding pattern within the relationship between you and father, meaning father expressed that you shouldn't be acting in certain ways. And because you are inclined to act in those ways, maybe there was something shameful embedded in you about yourself, a belief that you should be ashamed of that way of behaving. And maybe it is when you want to express affection to somebody else. Yes, I'm totally getting this as it's really resonating. Okay, so now that I've flipped it to you being another person in this scenario, I want to express that this person that you are still needs compassion, and you need your compassion. You know, you're in your integrity to want to do what you were wanting to do, which is maybe engage with another being, maybe express a crush, or give a gift, like those flowers in the picture. And there's a program that's been embedded in you. I think it's by father, and it could be by example, or maybe it's something they said to you. I think it's something they advised you of, the worst advice they ever gave you. What's the worst advice your father ever gave you? How about defend yourself at all costs? Don't let women or men, whoever it is that you may be attracted to, know your vulnerability, your weakness, how you feel about them. You can't trust yourself to choose wisely. So do not let your feelings be known. Don't let somebody get to know you. Defend yourself. Don't be silly and goofy and lighthearted with others. If you do, you will be rejected, heartbroken, seen as silly, dismissed. So think about this as a young child being given this advice, that you're really being given the message that you can't be who you really are and be accepted. Because even father, or a father-like person, let you know that you would be rejected, and they rejected it in you. So that's where that shame is coming in. It's really rooted in the impression you got by how father acted themselves, and so you adopted that as well, or something they specifically told you. And I think for some of you, it's definitely what they told you, or what you heard them say to someone else. Maybe they made fun of somebody who was foolishly in love or expressing their love, giving flowers. Maybe they put someone down that used to give flowers to their wife or something and called them a sap, and, expressed that they thought that they were weak for doing so. Something like that. So you no longer fit the expectation of your father. Give yourself what you want. Wow. This is being highlighted for you in this scenario where you feel like there's unrequited love. Grudge and perception. Yeah, okay. I'm just going to say this because it kind of feels like it's coming from out of nowhere, but I'm going to say it because I'm going to trust myself. It feels like you are holding the perception that the other person is holding a grudge against you for something. Maybe for the way that you've treated them, or the way that you've held back, the way that you've acted uninterested due to your programming. I really do think that this is asking you to add compassion to yourself, to acknowledge that this is the pattern that you've been living in, holding yourself back, and validate why. Of course, if you were advised to do this by your father at a young age, or if you learned this for some reason in your upbringing, or by some other male figure that had authority, who had modeled this to you, I think it's completely understandable that you would have adopted it. And it's understandable why you wanted to live to that, because there was also this shame buried in that you would have to feel if you didn't live to it. Because the shame comes up when you don't live up to that expectation that was implanted in you of how you should behave instead. And it's important to accept this is where you're at. This is where you're at. You have this as an experience. We could call it a wounding pattern or a coping mechanism, or we could just call it one of the experiences that your soul came here in this incarnation to experience. And you have done it. You have experienced it, and now you're at a point where you are ready to release yourself from this. Give yourself what you want. You no longer fit that expectation. We talk about bringing ourselves into fair relating and not having expectations of people. Why? Because people are free to be who they are. They're allowed to grow and learn and change. Unless they've made an agreement with you on how they're going to show up, let them be free. And once you accept that this is where you're at, that you have this thing to heal, then you're going to be brought to the most difficult part for you, because you may not be practiced at it. And the whole purpose of this coping mechanism that you've been operating in was to avoid feeling the shame. And now I'm going to ask you to be present with it. Invite the shame in like it's a 5-year-old child and you're the parent of it. And just be with it. Let it be with you. Don't push it away. Wish it was different. You're not blaming anyone at this point. You're not saying, I'm going to be with this shame because my father taught me or made me feel shame about this, about being who I am. It's no longer that. It's just being with that shame. Not pushing it away, not wishing it was different, not thinking about the past or the future, just like being in presence with it. And as you do this, you become the version of yourself that can process that. There may be tears. You may want to be in a safe container when you do this. How about the bathtub? How about put some Epsom salts and some crystals in there? Take a shower, take a walk in the woods. Do this in a container where you feel comfortable in releasing those emotions. Because especially if it's one of these first times that you're letting this emotion have the light of day, it may feel very overwhelming and there may be a release. And that's okay. In fact, I would encourage it. And you're going to have your own back through this, meaning you're just going to be with it. It doesn't have to do anything, prove anything. It's just there, that feeling. And you're becoming the version of yourself who can handle that feeling. And when you are that version of yourself, that feeling will move through the space that you have allowed for it. And once it moves, it won't be there pressing on you anymore, and you won't be acting in ways that are designed specifically to avoid ever having to feel it. So the coping mechanism that you've been using of hiding the way you feel or pretending that you're uninterested in people who express interest in you will disappear. Now, if you are the version of this story where you are expressing your interest in people that are not interested in you, perhaps Father also treated you that way. Perhaps Father ignored you or neglected to show care. And perhaps you've been unwilling to actually look at that within yourself, and you've been repeatedly glossing over the situation and pretending that people have not been rejecting you or not showing up for you the way that you deserve. And in that case, the process and the formula is the same: to acknowledge it, to validate why you've been doing it, to accept that this is the case and be present with what it feels like. So what does it feel like when you finally admit to yourself that you have been experiencing repeated bouts of unrequited love, that you've been focusing on people who do not return your affections? And when you are present with that feeling, and maybe it's loneliness or emptiness, you become the version of yourself who can handle it. And now, whichever version of this story you have lived out, you become this version that can give yourself what you need. So either you become a person who is more discerning about who you choose to focus on and give your affections to. Maybe you are brave enough now to have the conversations to find out if the other person is interested. Or if you're the person who had been holding back your feelings and acting sort of aloof, you now become brave enough to reciprocate feelings in relationship with others. And you are also brave enough to have the conversation about making agreements on how you'll each show up, which creates the safe container that you need in order to feel comfortable expressing yourself. So people don't have expectations of you. Because having had expectations of you was an original wound, and you may be very hesitant to allow that to happen again. And in actuality, this has primed you for a new way of relating on Earth that all beings will be evolving towards. You're just a bit ahead of the curve. And maybe you got there by a different means. But the fact that you want to avoid allowing people to put their expectations on you is a good step in the right direction. I would say that you're ahead of the game in that. And if you're someone who's been putting expectations on others or having absolutely no expectation of others, you're also ahead of the game. And what you'll want to do is create that safe container where you both can feel comfortable expressing to each other by making agreements about how you both agree to show up in relationship. So it's not just being blind to somebody's ignoring you anymore. Actually have the conversation, create the safe container, and then relate within that dynamic. So what this is the truth of who you are is coming to light for you, and it's being highlighted in the pattern. The pattern of it is being highlighted within the relationship that this has brought to you, this story has brought to mind for you. And through this relationship example, you are now being given this opportunity to release yourself from the pattern. And it was literally highlighted in this scenario for you. So if you had a perception of somebody holding a grudge against you, that could fall away with the bigger picture view. Or you'll understand that that was just a story about you trying to explain to yourself why they were showing up the way they were, or why you didn't have to address it with them. Okay, pick one. There is your story. Time to reflect. We'll see you in the next one. Hi, reflection number 2. We're actually beginning this recording at 11:11. So that could be a synchronicity for you. Got some oracle cards here already dealt out, so I'm going to look at them to get a bigger picture view. We got health, we got time to move, so there may be a call for some exercise, maybe to get some energy moving within you. They are a sovereign being, fully capable and responsible for themselves. And there may be a need for forgiveness because you're being given the forgiveness formula. Accept how you feel first, be with your feelings, then accept how they may feel. We've got the feelings card here, and it looks like Rabbit might be full of themselves. Is Rabbit embarrassed or proud? How does Dog feel about Rabbit? How does Cat feel about Rabbit? Which reaction best reflects how you feel about Rabbit? So here's Rabbit, he appears to be proud to me. And Dog seems a little bit eye-rolly annoyed, and Cat seems to be putting Rabbit up on that pedestal. How would you feel about a person like this who is proud of themselves? It's a possibility you might think that they're arrogant. Or the other possibility is that you might actually cheer them on and be glad that they have this high view of themselves. Let's see what else we've got. We got yet, even though, on the other hand, just from the Conjunctions Oracle. The 30s, consequences. Maybe suffering the consequences of something that you did in your 30s, and it could be just a lifestyle. You'll want to assess your values, right? So, whether you're the person who looks up to and admires someone who's proud of themselves, or the person who feels annoyed by someone who's proud of themselves, it can show you a little bit about what is important to you. Is humility more important to you than being proud of oneself? Just kind of assess what your values are in this situation that's coming to mind. And if no situation is coming to mind yet, we have a few more cards. Let's pull them out. Painful, hurtful, agonizing, unbearable. So this is saying that you are quite bothered by something. Merciless, heartless, cruel, ruthless. You feel this way about someone else. Do you remember a favorite inside joke with coworkers, friends, or family? Keep going. You're seeing another side to someone. It is a specific person in your life. And maybe you feel a soul bond with this person. You have inspired me to grow alone. Okay? I am in a relationship. Okay? You have a muse, a child of a friend, and then we have a blank. When we're looking at who we might be referencing in your life, this person is not identified here in these cards beyond muse or child of a friend. Child of a friend might be someone that you feel a bit protective of. Muse is someone who inspires you. You know, sometimes we get inspired to go our own way. Let's see what the things that are potentially showing up in this reading are. Now, very interestingly, when I just said the muse inspires you, we got uninspired. Because perhaps you are feeling more angry than inspired. Apathy. Maybe you're suppressing your anger. Power struggle. Because you're too busy trying to get what you want. Yeah, it's the way you would see the child of a friend when they were being bratty and trying to get what they want. You would more likely be annoyed because it's not your kid, right? And you might kind of think, well, handle that, you know? If it's not your kid, you can sort of feel like the parent should be just handling it. And that might be because you are revealing to yourself a pattern within, which is a pattern of power struggles, of getting your way. This might have shown up in your life by you trying to control circumstances. You likely have a lot of expectations of the people in your life. It could be that you are expecting someone else to exercise and get healthy. You might have even threatened to end the relationship if they didn't. This is asking you to remember that they're a sovereign being, fully capable and responsible for themselves. You know, sometimes we want people to clean up their act and do better because we don't want to be the one to have to clean up the mess. You know, we don't want to be the one who is affected by the consequences. And sometimes we can justify it to ourselves. And this is bringing us back to looking at our values. What's most important to you? Is it most important to you to be supportive of someone in an unconditionally loving way? Or is it more important for you to protect yourself from being affected by somebody else? You know, which is more important? You have to decide because you want to live your values. This could be a very painful situation because you may feel like the only way to live your values, if you're valuing more that you're not negatively affected by those that you love and that you're not required to sacrifice, that you have to move away from somebody that you love. That could be very, very painful. But as you're watching this other person in their pride, you can do nothing about it. Like Dog's arms are crossed. Like he knows, like he can't do anything about this. He just got to stand by while this person does their whatevers. You're seeing another side of them. You know that the consequences are not going to be great, and the consequences within your relating dynamic isn't great. So it's like may feel stuck with this person who's acting in this way. And this is going to lead to a lot of resentment and, numbing out, distracting. There's going to have to be a coping mechanism when you're in this situation, unless you take it into your own hands and you do take some space. You move on, you move away. Take the time to figure out what your values are, what is most important to you. You forgive them. When you have the space, you honor how you felt in it. Like, I felt powerless. I felt like I was being taken advantage of. I felt like I was unimportant to the other. I felt like I was always having to clean up the messes. I felt burdened. And once you accept how you feel, you be with that feeling. Be present with what that feels like. So this process it through. And then once you are the version of yourself that can handle those feelings, because you've finally given yourself the space to do so, meaning you broke away from the pattern so that you could process, then you might be able to look and accept how they're feeling. Like, this person, yes, they're in pride, but like, they are allowed to be that way, right? Like, there's a reason that they're doing it. Maybe they're puffing up their chest so that they can avoid a certain wound or feel important enough or get attention they feel they need, or, whatever it is. You may see it pretty clearly, and you can kind of accept that in them too. You might even add compassion for the situation, where you previously couldn't feel anything about it because you were too busy dealing and coping with it and just kind of being swept up in the cycle over and over again. Stepping out of it allows you to look at it with some level of compassion, but also to gain your inspiration back. Because first of all, yes, you may have been inspired to step out of the situation. What else are you being inspired to? What do you want to create? Do you want to create a life for yourself where you're not in that position, or that where you definitely don't do that to other people? Can you be a shining example of something that you prefer and that you learned that you prefer through living out firsthand what you don't prefer? There's this thing about the time you've invested with this person already. Before you saw them from this certain light, you saw them a different way, and maybe you had inside jokes, and maybe there's a lot of time spent with this person, and maybe there's a part of you that has to mourn the loss of that, or mourn the continuation of that, or the life that you thought that you were investing in. There may be some grief involved in letting go a dream or a plan for the future. So this is really asking you to look at your own values so that you can start living them. Because this example, this person in your life, is showing you how you have robbed yourself of the ability to be inspired to new and exciting things. Because you're so caught up in the cycle of trying to manage them and the power struggles and the consequences of what they're doing and how they're living. And it is extremely painful to you because you are actually abandoning yourself. And maybe you've been sticking it with it because you feel like you can't abandon them. Because look what will happen to them if you stop doing the cleanup for them. But in so doing, you have been abandoning yourself. And the only hope that you have of changing them, because you know you can't change them, is being an example of another choice. So if you're the one in their vicinity, you're the only one they can see, and there's no example of another way to live, they don't have any hope of deciding to live another way. Are you enabling them to continue in this pattern of, I think, being run by pride and sort of a superficial way of gaining attention, love, admiration, things like that? It says dream bigger. We got power struggle again and self-assessment. Why are you so prone to power struggles? This might have been triggering when I just said that. Why are you so prone to power struggles? Okay. Power struggles come from our want to have life in a predictable way. So this means that we really need our container to be very small. Something I learned about people who are coping through narcissism, which is that extreme pride and a focus on getting one's own needs met, and often at the expense of others. So you may be relating to someone who acts in those manners, and you may not have realized it until now. But you may also have some of those traits. And because one of the ways that people with those traits will function is to keep their world very small, to have everything very predictable. Go to all the same places, only talk to the same people, have a workspace where they are in control, where they're not subjected to too many other outside forces and things like that. But keeping the life very small and predictable is one of the ways that they cope with managing their feelings, I guess, the emotions, because emotions and feelings aren't something that they're dealing with necessarily, and so they want to avoid being thrown off and dysregulated. So the environment gets controlled, and also the people around them get controlled. And this can be done in really manipulative and sneaky ways. It can be done through gaslighting, through misleading, through coercion, through enticement. Maybe they learn your weaknesses and then they use them to their advantage. So you may have grown up with this kind of power struggle being used, and this might be why you were susceptible to it later in life. And so to look at why you are so susceptible to power struggle might ask you to look back into your childhood to find, was there another time that you felt this way? The way that you feel now when you deal with this person. When's the last time you felt that way? And when's the very first time you felt that way? You can identify a memory or a person from the past that rooted this feeling in you, then you know that it's an unresolved overwhelm or traumatic experience, or repeatedly traumatizing experience, because it was alive in the relating dynamic between you and a parent, potentially, or between you and someone who did actually have power over you. Maybe they were responsible for meeting your needs, like shelter, food, love, whatever it may be. So this primed you to fall into this pattern in life, and you have learned a lot by living it. There are things that you've learned that you wouldn't have otherwise learned, so it's not for nothing, even though it has been difficult and painful and excruciating, and it may be very difficult to think that there was some benefit to it at this point before you've healed. So the first step, of course, when you're beginning to heal this is to get out of the situation, and that can be very difficult. So you might want to do this process of being with the feelings that you're going to feel when you step away before you do it, so that you have already become the version of yourself that can handle it. And the feelings that you're going to feel could be grief, could be fear, loneliness. You could fear retaliation. Because often that was a technique used amongst people who don't care about how they affect the other person. They can retaliate in ways that are really awful. Maybe they threaten your reputation. Maybe they threaten other relationships that you have. And so this is really challenging you to build up the skills that you need to repair relationships, to be confident in yourself, and to really respect yourself and hold yourself in high enough regard that you will take the steps that you need to take in order to gain your life back and dream bigger. This is saying, like, the potential for you is huge. And once you get the ball rolling in this direction, and you assess yourself, you're going to find all these skills that you have and that you might not even have realized that you had until you saw yourself getting through that situation. So this is a really difficult one, and there's been a lot of suppressing and denying, and that was done for the purpose of surviving. And that's why it feels such high stakes and so painful, because it was life or death at some point, earlier on. Like if you didn't conform to the home you grew up in and the people who were charged with your care, you weren't going to get your needs met, and then you might not survive. Like it was serious, and now you are in a position to take yourself through the process. One of the things that you're going to want to assess besides your values is your strengths and also your weaknesses. Everyone has weaknesses, and you're going to want to know those, because if you know that you're really weak to people playing very needy of you, and that you're susceptible to taking them back or, trying not to disappoint them, if you know about that about yourself, then you can kind of take safeguards. You can tell yourself, okay, well, I'm going to think really hard before I make that decision to go back into it, or I'm not going to let them convince me, or I'm going to go no contact, or I'm going to try, using this apathy towards them instead of towards my own life and dreams and soul's purpose. There are things that you can do to safeguard yourself through the process once you get really real with what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are. As we do this, we're going to know that there is this other timeline for you where you are living the dream, so to speak. And the dream is way bigger than you could have imagined, because where you've been, it didn't give you any room to dream or think about achieving what you're really capable of. Probably in this scenario that you've been living with this person, the dreams were about safety, security, about having enough, about maybe the wealth was so that you would never have to go without. The things that you actually can achieve are going to far exceed your basic needs for survival on this new timeline. And on this new timeline, you don't have to worry about retaliation from the other. You're just holding space for them to find their way. And they may find their way very quickly on the new timeline. We're allowing that for them. And even if they don't, you will have covered all your bases, so to speak, that you will have healed all the places within you that could have been susceptible to whatever it is they might sling. I'm not saying to not be strategic or to not, take precautions where you need to. If you need organizations like the law and other safeguards, by all means. I'm not saying to go it alone if you don't have to, or if you don't want to, if you don't think that's wise. I'm not. I am saying that there is a way out of this. It is this combination of being with your feelings about, well, first of all, admitting where you're at, accepting where you're at, being with your feelings, and also like using some level of strategy, being very self-aware on what your strengths and weaknesses are and what your values are, like what's important to you. Make lists, and these lists can be updated every 6 months or so, because as we change, our perspective change and what's important to us change. Our strengths change and our weaknesses change as we grow and learn. So this is a real invitation for you into this timeline where you do find your way. You are inspired. You are not apathetic. You're not putting yourself in a position to have to feel a prisoner to somebody else's ego and egoic coping structures, that instead you've moved to a position where if you see people in that position, that you hold compassion because you understand that they are living out the programs that they have been instilled with through a very difficult and traumatic upbringing. And your compassion allows you to see that from a bigger picture view, and And knowing yourself and what you're capable of allows you to help in such a way where it is appropriate and without sacrificing yourself. So meaning you've filled up your own cup, you've healed the places that you needed to heal. You're not going to be detrimentally affected by what energy that they're in. Like they can be prideful, they can be angry, they can be vengeful, and you are removed from it. But you also understand and hold space for them to grow and learn out of that, and you remain an example. And even if you have to take so much space that they don't really even see you anymore, the absence of you might be the only indicator for them that something is off in their behavior. When everyone starts walking away because they don't want to be treated the way that they treat people, that's when they get the clue. Oh, the common denominator is me. I might need to change something. So this higher timeline allows them to do that. So if you stay stuck on this lower timeline where you've been living miserably and in pain, they're also going to stay stuck. So you've opened up a bigger possibility for not only yourself, but the other. We don't have to hold a grudge against them or wish that they got treated the way that they treated you or any of that. Because you've healed within yourself all the places that were susceptible to the situation, you're now brought into compassion for yourself and the other. Meaning you understand that they're already suffering because they're in that energy. You understand that. You don't need them to be paid back with the pain that they may have caused or that you allowed within yourself by being in that situation. Okay, pick 2, that is your reading. Reflection number 3. I have oracle cards already dealt out. We're going to flip them over and see what you got. Okay, we may be dealing with some level of fantasy, cognitive dissonance. So something that you can't see fully for what it is, maybe at the root of what we're looking at here. You also may find yourself very stubborn, so unwilling to be open and expand to other perspectives, other experiences. Who may be involved in this? Angels, a coworker, other. So it may not be an angel or a coworker. It's just someone else. Could be others in general. I'm completely in love with you. Let's go out. I remember everything. So coworker might be someone you met at work or met at their work. And it also could be someone that you're, just heard meant to work with. Interesting. Okay. We got Jupiter, Sophia, Pisces, and MC. Yeah, another energy about work. Work, reputation, where the world sees you. Maybe you really like the idea of being seen with this person. Do you remember the most embarrassing moment in your life? You may have lived a very embarrassing moment in the presence of this person or them with you. Do you remember whether you worried about being popular as a teen? All right, one moment. Okay, so there may be distractions, and the fantasy may be used as a distraction. And it may even be centered around your popularity, how important you are to others, how special you might be. And you are all those things, right? But recognize, is there a pattern of living a fantasy of those things, yet not being able to bring it into reality? Okay. So perhaps this reading is going to help us do that and find the thing that can be adjusted and brought into resonance. Because right now you're not aware of something that is holding you back from living that reality. And it's some sort of stubbornness. Interesting. It could be about avoiding embarrassment. Magical. It's like you just want it to happen like by a miracle, magically. Yeah, there may be some sort of like primping and like really going on this surface level of how things look. Shiny. We got magical and then shiny. You know? Have you ever heard like all that glitters is not gold? It's like looking at the shiny thing, looking at things in terms of like, oh, this person would look good on my arm kind of thing, instead of, oh, I'm really interested in what that person is about, like who they are as a person, you know? Friendly. Behaving in darkness. Changed belief, and you have faith. Okay. So you actually do believe this can happen. And there's just one piece of it that's still held off. Okay? This is great because we're getting somewhere here. Like I feel like you've been on a journey of learning what needed to be adjusted in your reality, excuse me, in order to accomplish this dream. And maybe you did use the fantasy of it as a distraction for a long time, but maybe you've done that so long that you are ready to bring it into reality, or a version of it. We got assistance, like maybe you're thinking that you'll ask for help, ask them for help, they'll ask you for help. We've got child, maybe a child involved. You know, this could be about your child, feeling like your child is special and feeling like their accomplishments they'll achieve something certain, or trying to make them live up to your expectation and what they'll become in the world. It could be something like that as well. That could be another storyline here. Yeah, okay. Depression. If you get bouts of depression, what that is the unprocessed thing that we're aiming to uncover in this reading, in this story, that is still anchoring you into the keeping that as a fantasy. You know, if it is your child and you're looking to dictate how they live, like then the darkness that you're not aware of is that their life is not for you to decide how they live. Their life is their own. And so what you're ultimately going to be brought to is a need to release them into their own plans, you know? That will take some inner work and looking at why you believed that way. But as far as I can tell, I'm going to follow this other storyline here. So if you are on the storyline with a child and what you're looking for them to achieve, we'll see if we swing back around to that scenario at some point, but I'm going to flip back over to someone who is maybe just looking to someone else as part of their fantasy and that they want to create this into the reality. We got throat. There's something about this hasn't been spoken, or it needs to be spoken, or maybe you get like a frog in your throat when you try to speak to this person. We got as, in order to, as, hence, since. Like it feels like the natural next progression. We've got in feelings, what did Bunny do? What is Rabbit feeling about the flowers? Does Bunny know there is a problem? What would you say to Bunny? Apparently Bunny is the small one and Rabbit is the big one. So someone did something here. He cut all the flowers out of the garden here. Now he's giving them. And Rabbit sees this, right? Like, oh, you're giving me flowers, but like you cut them out of my garden. So if you were Rabbit, what would you say to Bunny? I mean, obviously there's the innocence of a child here depicted in this bunny. And his intentions are so good. So it is recognizing that your intentions are good. And someone might see a bigger picture than you do. Someone might see a bigger picture than you do. And it doesn't mean that this can't happen. I think it means that there might be a better way. They can see a different solution. There's something that you would tend to do that would overlook something else that's important to look at. And it's below the surface. It's in your subconscious. We got car trouble, new beginning, fresh start, unrequited love, affected health, be here, presence, obsession, and solid foundation. Yeah, that's what it feels like to me. There's this mixture of, all right, we're going along well, this could happen, except there's something in here that's not quite up to where it could be. Like, you got a good foundation, but there's something in the building, in the mortar, that is not as healthy as it could be. It's going to stop you from getting from here to there. Okay, so you got to change something in your equation. If you have someone that you speak to in a professional manner about this, maybe they could give you some wisdom or ideas. Maybe you haven't spoken to anybody about this. When you do communicate with the other person, this is suggesting that you communicate using I statements so that you're not putting expectations on them. It's like, you know, I know that you are unsure about me, you know, like use I statements. That was a bad example because I don't necessarily want you to say, I know. I mean, I want you to own whatever you're saying. It's like, I feel this. I want this. That's what you're wanting to go in to express, so that you're not making assumptions and expectations of the other person. And you're not telling them how to feel or be. So if this was the case with like you're hoping something for a child, it's like if you're the parent of the child and you're saying something like, I want you to become a ballerina, it's not really fair, right? But at least the child knows that that's something you want. And maybe eventually, after much therapy later in life, they can decide what they want, you know? But using an I statement means that we're willing to own what we want. And that's an important aspect of this. I don't think you're stupid or anything, so I know that you might be hesitant to share what's been in your fantasy or that you've been obsessed with it or something like that. And that's okay. It's okay to be hesitant to share those aspects. Let's take care of those aspects now so that they don't have to come into play. It's actually at the point where it could be affecting your health because it's a repeating pattern that's been with you for a long time. It's been trying to get your attention, probably through this situation. And maybe it's that you haven't been able to communicate yourself effectively in this situation. And it's indicating to you a place where you have suppressed your own voice. Why did you suppress your voice? It says, allow the experience to impress upon you instead of impressing your will. So, like one of these said, let's go out. Instead, you would say, I would like to go out with you. Would you like to go out with me? instead of let's go out, which is you kind of telling them what you want them to do. Pose it back into a question. And then they're free to answer how they want to answer, which they may have done even if you posed it as a let's go out, right? They might have. But they're going to feel more respected. Whereas if you say let's go out, you're just plugging them into your vision. But if you say, I want to go out with you, do you want to go out? Now you're allowing them to be who they are. They're coming with all the thoughts and feelings and vulnerabilities that they have. And maybe they'll have a chance to express that to you, or maybe they'll let you know what they want to do, or, you're leaving it open so that they can bring themselves into the space, and it's not just your fantasy that prevails. Your fantasy might be there as a way to protect yourself as well, meaning maybe there's some aspect of the unknown that you're not yet comfortable with. There's really just a need to ground this in a way that respects and allows the other person to show up as they are. There's some element of, that thing that we talked about as with the parent wanting the child to become something, maybe that happened to you. Maybe that's why you're in the habit of not allowing other people to be who they are, because someone didn't allow you to be who you are. They expected you to become something specific. And now you are going through life without the awareness that you're actually doing that to others as well. You want others to fill this role, this shiny role that you have made for them in your mind, in your fantasy, just like a parental figure did for you. And if it wasn't a career that they expected you to be in, then it could have been just a way of being. That you're giving, that you're generous. That you're the cool one, right? Worried about being popular as a teen. And then the most embarrassing moment in your life. I feel like I want another card to see a little bit more about what's the actual crux of the issue that this person is unaware of in their own subconscious when it comes to entering into this experience with the other. I just heard the heart, of course. We got 3 to 4 years. This may have been going on for a long time. Human family, humiliation, just kind of like that embarrassment. Whose best interest? And sage. Okay. I just heard you may never follow through if you don't take care of the root issue of being worried about being embarrassed or humiliated. This happened originally in your human family. This theme may have been coming up where you've had fear of being humiliated or embarrassed, or reminders of the times that you were humiliated or embarrassed in the past 2 to 3 months. It's because this is kind of wanting to come up and out of your reality. It's like, you don't need this anymore, so let's look at it, extract the gold from it, see what it is, where it came from and why it's there, so that we can release it and get back to the flow of things. It's about how you look. It's about who you surround yourself with, what you wear, the clothes you wear, what brands even. It could be something like that. It's something a little bit superficial. I have this idea. Like maybe in school age you were made fun of for the brands that you were wearing or not wearing. It could have been something really like that, where, kids get cliquey and get this idea that they have some sort of superiority or status based on the brands that they wear and how much money they have and how much money that costs. And this could have really stuck in you, and you could have had a really embarrassing moment where you were laughed at or judged for something so shallow. And you may not realize that now that became something important to you. And it's like your subconscious has deemed like, oh, don't ever get caught out that way again. This is something really important. Like we need to make sure we always have that status, that brand, that shiny thing. We need to make sure that we always have something looking good on our on our arm, And it's like this is a misunderstanding. So the belief is that your value and actually what your heart wants is tied to this really superficial thing, like an image that you're trying to portray. And the thing is that you are inadvertently cutting down someone's garden. So if you go to this person, all right, one moment. So many distractions, pick 3. So I do think that it may not just be you working against yourself in this, but others might actually be trying to distract you from this thing that you are here to achieve and accomplish for yourself. Now, what I was saying is like, if you go to some person that you're trying to establish something with, and you have this level of superficiality built into the formula, the mortar that you're trying to build with, you're inadvertently cutting down their garden. It's like you're not even allowing them the space to bloom as themselves and who they are, because you're trying to fit them into an image that you have that they need to be to fit into your fantasy. And you want to allow the room for someone to be who they are, how they are. In fact, in an ideal situation, you would be inspiring each other to grow and learn and be better, and to dream bigger, and to live out the highest version of yourself. And if you want to live out the highest version of yourself, of course you want them to live out the highest version of themselves too. I think once this is brought to your attention, you might even start to feel that humiliation and embarrassment that you even thought this way. And that is a gift, because that is going to allow you to process through this emotion. It's like, great, you've been activated in that feeling. Now it's there for you. So as I call this out for you and you realize that you were trying to put somebody in this box of expectation of how they needed to shine for you, now you can take that feeling and don't let it go. So we're going to acknowledge that you've been doing this, accept that this is where you're at, and we'll validate why you had it. Like there's a reason. Maybe it was an experience earlier on in high school like we described, or maybe it's some other experience that you can recognize. Or maybe it's just in general the group of people that you're around value this as well, and you wanted to impress them, or you wanted to avoid them laughing at you or singling you out or judging you for a lack of that thing. And then you're going to be present with that feeling of being embarrassed and humiliated for having done this. Now you tried to put somebody in a box of showing up in a shiny way that you wanted them to be. And the way that you feel about that is the feeling that I'm asking you to be present with. And when you're present with this feeling, you're not thinking about the past anymore. You're not thinking about the future. You're not blaming anyone. You're not feeling like you were wrong. You're not wishing it goes away. You're just being present with that embarrassment. What does it feel like to feel that way? It's like allowing that feeling to be with you. And as you allow that feeling to be with you with no pressure, no resistance to it, and no, constraints on the time you're willing to spend, you eventually become the version of yourself that can process that embarrassment and humiliation. And once you are the version of yourself that can process embarrassment and humiliation, that feeling passes right through. And now you are a conduit for any energy like that. And you also won't tend to take that kind of thing personal again. You've basically matured yourself up to the version of yourself that understands that these things are not all that matters, and that it's not embarrassing to wear an off-brand pair of shoes if you like the shoes, or if that's all you could afford, or whatever the case may be, whatever the reason is. Maybe you don't want to ruin your good shoes, so you have some other shoes. There's nothing here that actually has to do with your worth and your value and how special you are. Nothing at all. How you adorn your body does not change your value. These are just simply ways of expressing yourself, and you can go back to utilizing it that way. And don't you want to see how the other chooses to express themselves too? And allow that to be their own, instead of trying to fit into some limitation, because you could be blown away and impressed and stimulated more by their own pure, authentic expression, as we all are in general as humans on Earth, sharing experiences with each other. Okay? So what a wonderful thing you've done here by allowing yourself to go forward on this solid foundation that you've built without that added kind of ingredient in the mortar that would eventually make it crumble. Now you don't have to live out the crumbling of that aspect anymore. How exciting for you. And this completes your reading, Pick 3. Thanks for being here.